American descendants of chattel slavery. How y'all doing, family? Oh, on this beautiful, delectable Friday, family. It is so beautiful out here in Southern California. It's hard to stay mad at much. I'm talking 80 degrees with a breeze. Family, no AC required out here in Long Beach. Strong Beach, okay? Snoopyville. I want to thank you so much for joining the live. I've got the extraordinary, the incomparable Dawood G. Ozin of Articles of ADOS Columbus. Hey, I am so excited. Prepare for a fire show, family. He is always serving up that ADOS political knowledge, empowering us as a people, giving us more in our arsenal to fight for not only reparations, but the COVID-19 stimulus relief plan for American descendants of chattel slavery. Oh, I'm so excited. I can hardly contain myself. I'm going to try to just let the intro music play out and rap with you guys a little bit while you follow in. Let me give some shout outs to S. Freedom Johnson. What up, fam? Joel Jones, Dayton, Ohio. Ohio. What's up, baby? My diaper buddy. Moni Love, I see you, gorgeous. Thank you for joining the live. Patricia Bradley, hello, hello. Carl Perry, welcome back. Follow in, family. Tell me where you slinging bricks from, because you know how we do it, family. You know we love us black, we love us strong, right? And we're out there slinging. We're out there praying. We're out there hollering. We're out there protesting. Okay, have y'all seen all the drama? Woo-wee! These white devils, they've been busy, y'all. They've been busy. Rise in power, Ahmaud Arbery. Rise in power. Oh, who's that other brother? Think his last name? Oh, I can't think. Child, I'm just seeing so much diabolicalness. Woo, ain't they wretched in the time of COVID to be gunning us down? Gunning us down. Gunning us down. But guess what? They cannot kill all of us. And they won't, family. Understand, you're beautiful. You're powerful. And God in you is greater than all of this enemy white folks is on. But we're going to get into it. We're going to chop it up with Mr. Giazan, Articles of ADOS. He's got some fire stuff to share. After that wretched, diabolical Supreme Court just passed that ruling, practically unanimously with the exception of Sotomayor, that these police can shoot and think later. Ooh, y'all know that made me hotter than fish grease. I'm not making light of it, family, but I'm trying to laugh through it to keep from crying on this vid right now. I'm working to hold it back. How in the world can Ruth Ginsburg participate in such a vote? So Mr. Giazan is here to share with us today, family, about the Supreme Court and about the Democratic Party in support of the conservative Supreme Court. Okay? And what does that mean for ADOS? I'm here to tell you, family, I've got folks in my circle. They ready to take up guns and take to the streets. That's not the way we gonna get this handled, family. We gotta think smart. We can't move on this emotion. But I get it, because that boils in me too. But the way I temper that is with education, political education. And I align myself with movements like the ADOS, Friends of ADOS Super PAC, so that we can change the face of Congress. We've got to be able to be at the table, or we are forever going to be on the menu, family. Understand, it's all of it, okay? And my people, we are waking up. Woo-wee. We are waking up. With that said, let me bring him upstairs. Mr. Dawood Chiazan. Let me bring you up. Just they can't even hear you yet, I don't think. There you go. You're up
Okay.
here now. You're upstairs in the main feed, family. Out of respect for Mr. Giazan, he chooses not to be on camera, but I trust that you can hear him, and that will not impede on what he has to share with us today. Uh, uh, Dawood, would you like to go ahead and greet the family?
Peace and blessings, everyone. All who are friends of ADOS TV, thank you and welcome for listening.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the discussion.
Yes, indeed. And we're going to jump right in. I don't want to further delay. We've got enough people in the live. I mean, more is always welcome. They can start their watch parties. But, Daoud, I read an article that you attached to one of my posts about the Supreme Court's recent ruling, almost unanimously, that cops are free to shoot and ask or think after the fact. Okay, you mentioned to me that that didn't just pass. Could you please share with my audience when that passed and the history that you were sharing with me before we went live about why that's in place, and tie it to United States becoming an apartheid nation?
All right. About 3 years ago, when I was in a deep depression, I had a friend that was a journalist with me in the 80s, and he approached me to work with him on writingwhileblack.com blog. And the person who formed that was a Miss Yolanda Simpson Cameron. And my friend's name was Bamani Moyenda. And they just said, do whatever you like. And I was just looking for a way to express myself. And so I, took the things that I knew. And so in regards to the Supreme Court matter regarding the ability to shoot first, ask questions later, well, 2 years ago, before this decision, I said that's in fact what's going to be happening with further Supreme Court decisions based on my analysis of what had been going on. And so I wrote in the Writing While Black the article American Apartheid X, and that was to allude to the fact that there is a plan in place to deal with the fact that whites as a collective in America realized that because of the fall of colonialism and the fact that the majority of the world's population, roughly 85 to 90%, are non-white, that they had a very big concern about their status, not only in the United States, but in the world. And they were going to do certain things to secure that. And one of those areas, one of many of those areas, is in Supreme Court decisions. Before the fall of the colonialism, we have the celebrated decision of Brown versus Board of Education. 9 white men decided ultimately in our favor that separate and unequal in schooling, especially, was unfair and harmful. And there's psychological reasons for that, which we're never told. But I won't go off to too much of a tangent on that. Well, so what did they want to do with the Supreme Court was ensure that future decisions would not benefit Black people. And that's what they've taken steps over the decades since that time to solidify. And again, that's just one of other areas. We won civil rights gains because we got so upset coming out of the 50s, out of the deaths and killings we were experiencing for merely being human. Uh, we rose politically and made certain demands and got certain results. And those results made my life better. I know they made my life better in Springfield, Ohio, just down the street from you, growing up. And since that time, all those advantages that were hard fought for and won have been slowly whittled away over time because as the fall of colonialism takes place, we have the rise of non-white majority population size because of the demographic shifts that are happening around the world, but particularly in the United States. Whites, for the first time by the middle of this century, will be a minority group among groups of non-whites. And so, what do you do if you've never overcome white, what I prefer to call white domination racism instead of white supremacy? What do you do when you don't overcome that? Well, you're going to act in certain ways that allows the behavior to mutate into other beneficial ways of expression. And one of those ways of expression, in terms of the Supreme Court, was to make sure and ensure justices on the court, no matter what color, will ultimately side in the interest of white preservation for their survival.
Oh my goodness. So this is what we can see also in the COVID-19 response, with them trying to vaccinate us, which many believe is in order to put a chip inside of us. And the fact that we're not even really dying from the COVID is what I'm coming to learn. Um, and
Yes.
this is it. This is why there's open season, and you see so many just ruthless murders of Black folks. It's like there's a war on us while we're vulnerable and fighting the COVID. Would all this stand to reason to support what you just shared?
Exactly. And when I go through the points, it's really going to open a brighter light because I know it's already lit, but it's going to get brighter when I go through all these points. And what I really want people to get, besides being more aware, not concerned or fearful, but aware, is that this makes you a little angry and gets you a little focused to doing something like our recent ancestors did that again made our lives better. Yours in Dayton, Ohio, mine in Springfield, Ohio. Our children, as we're going to talk tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that discussion,
Me too.
they're being cheated out of the life that I know I had growing up in the 70s. They're being cheated of that well into the future, for decades in the future. It's planned to get worse. And it's decisions
Well,
like this that will help that move along.
let me read from the
Because we didn't
chat.
grow up in that.
No, we did not. No, we did not. Let me shout out some of our audience who are our co-hosts in the chat. Good afternoon, Minkepi Ra Tuhatime. I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I do my best. Antonia Edwards, good morning. Good afternoon, ADOS New England. Uh, Min, Min, Minkepe says they are trying to make this a white ethno state since their population is dwindling. They are trying to get us used to being a bottom caste to serve other groups to our detriment. We have to stop being scared.
Yes, definitely. Definitely, we have to. And we also have to realize this is going on. Some of us don't want to see it, but it's going on. I didn't want to see it for a long time, but it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to jump the gun, but many folks think it's just a Republican thing.
No,
Um,
it's not. When I go through these points, you're going to see clearly it's not just a Republican thing.
Thank you so much. Let's jump into the points and do as you advised about the structure of the show. Family, get ready to chat your questions or comments in the chat. You guys can do that as Daoud goes through the points, and then he's going to go back and drill down on each of those points so we can get through the show in a very efficient way. Daoud, take it away.
Yes, I'm going to go through the points, and with each point, I'm going to ask a critical question. And so keep that in mind as well as I go through it. Here I go. Number one, oligarchy with fascistic tendencies was determined by the University of Princeton study in 2014 that our representative form of democratic government is no longer democratic. It determined that our democracy worked for the interests of ultra elite, otherwise known as the Fortune 100 or 1%. Of course, this is of no surprise. What is alarming is that the oligarchy is transitioning the United States into fascism, a form of government America fought a world war to prevent. At least most Americans believe that. So a fascist government, in brief, and you go to WikiLeaks and they kind of don't have an answer to that. They give all these excuses why it's not. They're not really sure. In brief, a fascist form of government is one that is led by the corporations, where the government fulfills corporate needs, not the citizens' needs, and the government is supposed to be out front serving the citizens' needs, while industry is supposed to be secondary. Well, in a fascist state, the corporations are primary, and therefore family ownership of corporate control dictates what happens in a country. The critical question here is, will we be able to economically escape the vagaries of white minority rule within the political context of fascism? Point number two: suspension of habeas corpus means you can be arrested and held without charge, used for the war on a military tactic, terrorism, in order to contain terrorist criminals at Guantanamo Bay and black sites. Given the experience, given the experience of Khalif Browder and others being held for as long as 3 years on Rikers Island, and the killings of black American citizens based on the sole evidence of white cop fear, could future suspensions of habeas corpus be used to control or contain black anger at these results? The critical question here is: isn't there a need for concern that this reach will be of habeas, things like habeas corpus suspension, will be visited upon America's historically despised group in mass on a regular basis? Point three: the Patriot Acts and the surveillance state. Americans knew of the passage of the Patriot Acts, but did not know that they had been prepared years in advance by a Democratic congressman. And when I get through all this, I'll come back to that and I'll say who that congressperson was, that Democrat congressperson was, and that the illegal surveillance of Americans had begun prior to the passage of the Patriot Acts. This so enraged one of the foot soldiers in that progression through DIA and Central Intelligence, Government Intelligence Services, that it was Edward Snowden that sort of ratted out how large this was and how invasive it was. And as you know, he had to leave the country. Critical question here: what long term purpose does this fulfill, given that Russia and China are in America's crosshairs and not terrorism? Point four: stand your ground laws stems from English common law known as the Castle Doctrine, that allowed for the Lords of the Manor to defend their large estates from inside their castles in Europe. Of course, since colonial times, this allowed white landowners to defend themselves from outside forces such as free blacks, indigenous blacks, poor whites, and those who were landless, because at this time, whites then were not considered white. In recent years, the political group, it's called, is abbreviated ALEC, or the American Legislative Exchange Council. Now, this is the group that if you could break into their office, you'll find everything that I'm talking about in terms of ensuring white minority rule. But this is the group, American Legislative Council, that has been spearheading such laws and corporate giveaways that would, in this case, empower lower caste whites who are being left out of white elite abilities of securing wealth to defend themselves, especially in times of social upheavals that are often caused by white elites themselves: financial collapse, ecological devastation, decline of infrastructure, water supply, that sort of thing. So during hurricane season, the one after Katrina, they made the case that responsible Florida citizens, this is where it was first passed, or whites, would need protection from looters and criminals, blacks, while police forces were overburdened helping other citizens during such times of crisis. Crisis. Yet haven't those who've used the stand your ground laws done so as a result of their actions away from their homes or castles and in non hurricane conditions? Exactly. A study ventured by Florida State House representatives consisting of Republicans and Democrats, who were the first to vote on the ALEC crafted bill, American Legislative Economic Council, concluded that 17, now this is before it passed, and this is the study they did to determine why, if they should vote for it. In this study, they determined 17 to 34-year-old Black and Hispanic males would be injured or murdered as a result of people claiming its protection. Both Republicans and Democrats supported the measure. Other states followed in rapid concession. Critical question here. Are groups like ALEC betting that millions of poor and struggling whites will be satisfied with being given arms with a license to kill in place of wealth? Point 5. Tolerance of police brutality. This country has a long history and tolerance of police brutality. Police at their origin are the slave catchers of old who were known to be quite brutal then in their quest to secure and protect the interests of property. So this is not a recent admixture to the attempt to secure white status as they become this nation's minority group. It's just an old, reliable institutional standby or tactic that is always within reach. The question here, what is the national tone and atmosphere when many of the police officers who remain on the force or not receive promotions, paid leave, or additional income from the public through donations when the victims are Black? Why is this tolerated? What can be done so that this tradition can be ended or countered as whites become a minority in America? Point 6. Extrajudicial killings of American citizens, from drone strikes to street injustice by agents of the state and white vigilantes. Killings of a father, son, and daughter in the name of terrorism and collateral damage without trial or jury. In 2010, President Obama directed the CIA to assassinate an American citizen in Yemen, Anwar al-Awlaki, despite the fact that he had never been charged with, let alone convicted of, any crime. And the agency successfully carried out that order a year later with a September 2011 drone strike. 2 weeks after the killing of al-Awlaki, a separate CIA drone strike in Yemen killed his 16-year-old American-born son, Abdulrahman, along with the boy's 17-year-old cousin and 7 other innocent Yemenis. These killings highlighted how the Obama administration was ravaging Yemen, one of the world's poorest countries, just weeks after he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Obama used cluster bombs that killed 35 Yemeni women and children. In yet another U.S. military-supported operation that was ordered by Trump, al-Awlaki's 8-year-old daughter was killed in Yemen. This strike was labeled collateral damage. The question for this point is, what do these extrajudicial killings of suspected terrorists, Black suspects, and unsuspected American citizens being murdered with any excuse used signify? What would this sound like to Sharpeville residents of South Africa in 1961? Point 7. Militarization of police forces. What does the Pentagon do with its excess military equipment? It gives them to state and local law enforcement who request them. Even after decades of declining violent crime rates, in 1990, Congress passed a National Defense Authorization Act with a clause allowing the transfer of excess personnel property from the Defense Department to local law enforcement, otherwise known as Section 1208. The clause was included in response to the surge of violent crime on the war on drugs in the late 1980s. It's worth noting that at the time, both chambers of Congress were controlled by Democrats during this time. The question here is, what short-term and long-term groups will need or require such treatment? Thinking of Ferguson in Baltimore has already answered this. In terms of protection from so-called violent crime, during an era where violent crime has been going down, all this militarization is going up, and Ferguson and Baltimore were examples of that military force was used to suppress our right for protest. How would that look in a future where there will be white minority rule is the question. Point eight, the extremely high tolerance for white male, individual, and mob violent behaviors. This has been as American as apple pie. From white revelers to armed, peaceful protesters, white male violence behaviors become labeled as everything other than violent. There was a Ohio State University study that determined that the mainstream white media enacts such labeling, picking the righteous activity of whites and illegitimate and dangerous activities of non whites. This is far from debatable. Many studies have acknowledged this, and that was the Ohio State study that determined that basically when white males commit violent acts, especially with guns, they're treated more sympathetically. Okay, so this is all appealing to this and nurturing this mentality of what will happen when they become and are recognized as United States minority. So the question here is, does a media already willing to minimize or excuse and even exonerate white male violence and deadly aggression lead to a future of minority rule by any means necessary? Point nine, complicity of the press in the promotion of white domination tactics and violence and aggression. As mentioned above, the mainstream white media's role has been clear and active for quite some time. With the active exclusion of non white reporters and editors, their promotion of white nationalist perspective will only continue. It must be clear to any objective observer that the role of the U.S. media is to provide cover for white male violence and aggression, while targeting legitimate non white resistance to this is not only illegitimate but dangerous. The question here is, what competent and strategic response activities should we engage in to effectively combat the anti Black propaganda historically and currently perpetuated by the mainstream white media? Point 10, the Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. First, why did Trump nominate Kavanaugh? And there I go off into a little bit of a diatribe. I'll stay away from that. The second area here is well, basically, in a nutshell, Trump was a Democrat for years. He didn't come from the cloth of usual Republican rise. That's another thing we could have leveraged Trump on, but we chose to just get focused on his racism. So what happens? Kavanaugh is a hack for Bush, and he rose up through the Bush family, so like the mafia family, really, and did a lot of backdoor stuff for them to hide their stuff, especially during the lie of Iraq to justify our going into Iraq. He was one of the lawyers that helped to work on that and protect the White House from scrutiny. He'd find dirt on people that would complain the most. Basically, that was his role. And so he gets there. He gets to be nominated, and this section goes into what I describe, and I'll do it briefly because I gave Exhibit A, get Exhibit B, and Exhibit C to prove it. But basically, women that he worked with over the years in Washington brought their names forward. The people that were there were Feinstein, Cory Booker, and Kamala Harris. They had names of at least 8 or 9 women, I guess they were all white, who were willing to testify about his egregious behavior while in the workplace and his conduct towards them over years in Washington, because this guy had spent years in Washington. Everybody knew him, right? And so these 8 or 9 women came forward. Then you have Dr. Ford. Her letter came through, and she was given assurances that her name wouldn't even be brought up. It was just she was submitting it because she thought it was important. Well, Feinstein, Booker, and Kamala Harris sat on that information for 5 weeks. It got so bad that one of their staff got upset and decided to leak it, and the Intercept reported it, that they were sitting on these names. So instead of focusing on all the women that brought complaints, they brought forward Miss Ford's information. And what did they turn it into with the help of the media? They turned it into the actions of this irresponsible young brat who get drunk too much at parties and act crazy towards girls during those parties. And they reduced it further by turning it into a he said, she said fest, where people got focused on whether it happened or not. And they were even going to open an investigation when they had these 8 or 9 white women that could testify to his immoral behavior while an adult in the workplace. These Democrats, Feinstein, Booker, and Harris, helped to keep a lid on that. I mean, this should be shocking to people,
It's unbelievable.
especially since both Booker and Harris were running for the presidency. They were
Exactly.
going to they were going to be emblems of Obama. This was another indication that they were going to be examples like Obama. The fact that they would sit on this to help a Republican get into a Supreme Court life appointment. Now imagine this. It's insane at this point to think that there's Democrats that are advocating for the working man, black or white, when this is going on. A lot of feminist lawyers in Washington were also in support of Kavanaugh, not because they agree with his politics, but they agree with the money flow. Because a lot of the people that were in during the Bush era are still there. They're the ones that were knocking things around for Obama until Obama and the white people that he works for finally got them to settle down. Okay. But all in all, those Bush people are still there. They're also the ones that are a thorn side in Trump. They don't like Trump either because he undermined the plan. The plan was for Hillary Clinton to get in. Hillary Clinton would have fulfilled their agenda to raise more of another Cold War against Russia and China. Trump undermined that. That was a good aspect of Trump. Trump is not a good figure at all. But the reality is he wasn't an insider like them, which is why 8 million people that voted for Obama, 8 million white people voted for Obama, are the same 8 million white people that voted for Trump. They didn't vote for Obama because he was black. They voted for him because they thought he was an outsider because he was black. They voted for Trump because he was a definite outsider, and the hope was that he would do something to change their needs. Well, he's been effectively leveraged by the white elites, the Bush era elites, to continue to take the country where they're taking it. They've not been totally in control with him. And of course, he can't be seen as a sympathetic figure, but in a lot of ways, Trump is a tragic figure that we could have used, but because of our hatred, and they've wielded it too, because of our hatred towards his prejudice and racism towards us, we hated him more than we loved our children effectively. And this is where I really get people angry at me. But let me go on.
Let me back
so
you
here
up.
we had Democrats ultimately helping.
Let me interject real quick to your point about Kamala, which is something that the ADOS exposed and, in my humble opinion, helped to contribute to her dropping out the race. Not only is she allowing herself as a Democrat to be a tool in the Kavanaugh hearings, but she was also instrumental as the AG up in the Bay of giving Steve Mnuchin cover when he was working with, I want to say it was One West Bank, to produce wrongful foreclosures on our homes up in the Bay, which cost us all the wealth we had up in the Bay Area. She gave him cover because he gave her some measly $11,000 in campaign financing for her Senate race.
Yeah.
And that's how she gave him cover. And now he is the Treasury Secretary to Trump?
That's right.
Because
she had over 1,000. She had over 1,000 counts on him. Over 1,000. And she let it go.
Not bring him up. She would not indict.
Yeah, that's right. And I submit that she go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to your point, because I get a lot of pushback from Democrats about my disdain for Biden, who can't complete a coherent sentence, who is the author of the 94 crime bill. And folks are like, well, he didn't incarcerate 1 million black men. Well, they were able to be incarcerated because of his strong stance on the floor of those hearings. He even had his name on it. All it takes is a look to YouTube. I'm not making things up. I get all this pushback because I'm insisting on a Democratic down ballot strategy to protect the 41% of ADOS who rely on government assistance by design, because everybody wants to act like the lesser of two evils is the best strategy for ADOS, even though it is clear that we are on the bottom in the country our ancestors built with their lives. I'm supposed to just go along to get along and vote blue no matter who. I've got people angry with me for jumping up and down in my own feed to insist that we vote ADOS for the president and give a Democratic Congress to gridlock government for the next 4 years between a Trump presidency and a Democratic Congress. Let them fight it out and hug it out for the next 4 years until the Democratic Party gives us what we are owed, which is reparations on their lips throughout the entire campaign process of 2024. But I'm the arch enemy, and ADOS is insignificant. But in the next breath, we're the ones that's causing all this damage through our non-influence of people to go out and vote Democratic down ballot, because Democrats are so much better than Republicans. The Democrats so much better is what people trying to sell me on, and I am going to outright war in my feed because everybody's stuck on unseating Trump as a priority while I'm trying to make our kids, our future,
there you go.
priority.
There you go. There you go. I totally agree with that. And that's why I came up with that term. We hated Trump more than we love our children. Sad. It is sad, but it's true. There's so much evidence for that. But let me go to the.
They won't look at this thing with their eyes wide open. They are going into this blindly as the mules that we've been for the last 60 years. Nobody wants. I keep trying to impress upon the people that our vote is the only commodity we've got. And if I hear one more time that our ancestors died for us to vote, my answer to that is they didn't die for us to put our intellect in the trunk to our own peril, for God's sake. They didn't die for that.
And they didn't die for those votes to be counted against us or not counted by both Republicans and Democrats. They didn't do that either. That's where I love people who come at me like that, because when I show them that Republicans and Democrats are working to undermine us, they just do it differently, but they undermine our votes. So while they're worried about us, which is we're easy because we're easy for even ourselves to beat up on as scapegoats, they won't fight them who are actively engaged in suppressing our vote. Both Republicans and Democrats for that, and I sent you material on that the other day. So if they're so concerned about our ancestors dying for that right, why aren't they focused on the people that are doing the most damage? They're taking out millions of Black votes, whether they were wanting to vote or not. They're taking out millions. Complaining about individuals, whether they're going to vote down ballot or not vote at all, is meaningless when they're taking out millions of us. That's how insane it is. I try to be gentle. They're ignorant when they talk like that, because if they knew this, it would at least shut them up to when they have to confront you with that. They should be confronting the white elites through the Democrat and Republican parties who are causing millions of Black votes not to be counted. Millions.
Let me have you
talking to us about our strategy is crazy.
Well, this is the thing I keep telling people, that being Democratic means the gas chamber. Being with the Republicans means the guillotine. They are the same. They're different sides of the same coin. We're dying anyway. Exactly. We're on the bottom, for God's sake. And why can't the Democrats stop with this loyalist nonsense that they're on, to really listen to a show like this to get schooled on what's really happening? It's almost like we want to be, in denial because we just are stuck on them being better for us, period, point blank. Don't want to read on this side how they're being complicit in undermining us and killing us too. I just want to take a break and read. I saw Dawn Page coming alive. She had about a 5-minute break from work. She's working hard. Thank you, Dawn, for being on the live. Let's see here. There are more comments. I just want to read from the family and help include them. Alec, and I'm gonna let you get back to it. They have been illegally monitoring us since we've been here. Carl Perry says we are not doomed to live with this fascism. I don't know how if we got to do something if we're not doomed. Alec is Minkepi says Alec is run by the elites. I believe it's financed by the likes of the Koch brothers. Carl Perry says Probably so. Many poor whites are their puppets too. I guess that's the taking up arms piece.
Yeah.
Carl says, wait, war, it's apartheid in motion. There's Don. Hi, Don. We are constantly being propagandized. We have to control our own schools, and our children have to know these things from a young age. We are at war. We can no longer deny our history in this country. Trey is a big fat wow. Carl says they're looking out for their golden parachutes. We're being hoodwinked and bamboozled from every angle. Menkepi says there is a war going on now between China and the U.S. Kamala identifies more as Brahmin Indian. Joelle is in agreement. And she says, yes, Steve Mnuchin is now the Treasury Secretary. She says, Menkepi says, Biden is the epitome of white mediocrity. Moni Love says the priority is ADOS platform, not ousting Trump. Carl Perry says, could you possibly be sharing this data, Dawood? Could you possibly be sharing this data, Dawood? I guess we'll do some links after the show in this stream, Carl, for you. I'll get some links from Dawood. Menkepi says the cross-check program took millions of us off the voting rolls. Money Love says we are policy focused, not party loyal. Amen. Okay, I've caught up the comments. If you want to comment on the comments or just keep going, I just like to include them because I can't see all their comments if I don't catch them as they're coming through in like a cluster for some reason.
I see. I see. No, I'll come back to them though when I get to finish. I got 3 more points to make, and then I'll be done with that. Then I'll come to their questions. The question for number
Okay.
10. The question for number 10 was, if we haven't effectively blunted Clarence Thomas, how are we going to meet the challenges of a Supreme Court full of Thomases as whites become a minority? Point 11. Fall of the American Empire. The demographic shift is not only impacting white population size relative to non-white American populations, it is occurring within an even greater context of the fall of American empire. While the demographic shift will mostly impact middle to lower class white Americans, America's fall as a world empire troubles the white Anglo-Saxon elite. With the rise of China and Russia's Putin refusal to follow orders, that's the only reason why we hate him. American elites are attempting to shift from terrorism to direct conflicts with these powers in order to excuse open aggression against them. This has always meant not only a further militarization American society, but clear demarcations of class and caste for Americans, because such distinctions in America or militarized societies has been used to prepare the population for conflicts with the other. The principal reason American planners have refused to rid the society of white domination racism. So within a society, maintaining sexism, classism, and racism helps to perpetuate a ready-made fighting force to always be ready to fight the other. And they've always used this ability, which is another reason why they will never desire to get rid of racism, white domination, because it has that impact on the lower strata of a society. You end up hating people that are different from you. It's easier to convince you to point a gun and shoot at another.
Wow. Basically putting a
So the
battery
question here is,
they're basically putting a battery in the back of these cops and giving them a license to annihilate us.
It's both in terms of cops and the military. And we have a society that nurtures trauma to make them more able and willing to perpetuate in committing atrocities. So the police officers are just one example of that outlet. Most likely, these police officers themselves had traumatic lives themselves, and they're grown within the context of a society that preferences them for being white. So when they get into police uniform, they carry all that with them. And a study was released, and I'll definitely give you the link on this, 2 years ago, where they took college women and police officers and tested them. And they found the result was that they saw a 5-year-old black child, older than he was, more potentially violent than he was, and more likely to commit crimes than people that were teenagers. And that's how low their sentiment has grown growing up in a white domination racist society.
Oh
So
my God.
and the white women that they were analyzing were going to be future teachers. So this is also a setup for tomorrow, because this is what our children are having to deal with when they go into the public school systems. All overwhelmingly, they're with teachers who are uh, bred in this society, nurtured in this society, to have a low disdain, forget low expectations, but a low disdain, and if not aggressive attitude toward black children. And this is also reflected in to the levels of punishment black children endure in the public school system. And point 12. And point 12 is, I didn't write this all out because we're experiencing it now. A crisis, quote unquote, that'll be utilized to pinpoint ADOS as a primary source of problems to justify all manners of security, containment, and removal. And that's where we're at right now. I didn't write this in because when I was going to hit this point 12, I was thinking, well, if I added that now, this was 2 years ago. If I added this, and it was because of the influenza problem of 2017, I, because of these earlier points, I realized that a situation like that could give them license to secure and contain black comings and goings. And I was concerned that if I wrote it down, it would make my piece look too conspiracy theory, all those negative terms they throw around to get people not to think. Well, I didn't add a point 12. I kept it at 11. And I'm not usually putting things in uneven numbers when I put things out there. The number 12 is the exact situation we're going through now with COVID. And I'm done.
Oh my goodness. Let me read a few more comments. Joel asks, now what are we going to do? After the information and the confirmation, now what? Carl says, that's insanity on steroids. Minkepi says, Putin still remembers when the bankers stole the gold from Russia. He has not forgotten that. Exactly. Did you want to expound on any of these questions or comments?
Oh my God, the Putin one. I mean, if Putin would just be like Vladimir, the previous guy in there, Boris Yeltsin. If he was just going to be more like Yeltsin, he would be America's best friend right now. But he won't. The big thing in Syria. This is just one of the examples. The big thing in Syria is that because Putin won't follow orders and won't do as he's told, we want to cut him out of the oil revenue that he's used to help get his people out of poverty. When we went in there after the fall of the Soviet Union, their average age, life expectancy was about 78 years old. Within a span of 5 or 6 years, it had dropped to 62. So Putin gets in and he raises the life expectancy to 72. That's why he's in power. That's why people keep voting for him. We're told that he's just being an autocratic dictator. But the people love him because he kicked out the oligarchs, some of them, that were doing business. And I bet that gentleman who remembers that also remembers the guy when Bush Jr. was governor of Texas. Where did this guy? He was a Russian oligarch. He ran away from Putin because Putin was going to jail him because he was still trying to give out kickbacks to British and American business interests. That man, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. That man ran straight to Texas, this Russian oligarch, and Bush protected him. I don't know where he's at to this day. He's probably even got a secret identity, for all I know. But Putin kicked butt. He wouldn't allow the West to continue to exploit his country, and that's the reason why he's got to be enemy number one in Americans' eyes. Even though he may be a good person, it doesn't matter. He's protecting his people, and that's what he should do as a leader. But he's not supposed to do that. He was supposed to allow American and European interests to come in and rape the people because they're Slavs. And Slavic people, that's where the term slave come from. And these Europeans, they will not forget that. They see them as, we were taught to call them serfs, but they are the ones that inspired the term slave that sadly we are identified with. And because he's over those Slavic nations, they're going to treat him like crap.
So let me ask you, what about all of this Russian interference in the elections, which I've never believed?
We covered that in episode 3, which is my favorite. It was how Russians were going into Ghana and using Russian troll farms to stoke racial tensions in America. All that is a lie. It's the same old thing they were saying in Garvey's time, and they definitely used it a lot during the civil rights time by claiming that Martin Luther King and others were subjected to Russian influence and therefore they shouldn't be taken seriously.
The
It is
Red
just an
Scare.
attempt. Exactly. It's just an attempt among whites to show whites that the reason why there's nothing wrong with the democracy, there's nothing wrong with the way things are done. There's just these black people who don't appreciate it, and these foreign actors are willing to stir up trouble amongst the Negroes. I mean, that is the same mentality that they use today, and sadly, it works a lot on whites, and sadly, it works too many on too many black people. Really, it
It
really works
really
too many on too
does.
many black people. Yeah, and it's the same old ploy to undermine black thought and attempts at gaining redress. That's all it's done for. It's a tactic used to do that. In fact, in a lot of ways, they needed Russia to explain away the travesties that they reap upon all American citizens, but particularly among ADOS. But there's nothing to that. We did the story, and we showed in the story that it was mainly a propaganda piece. There's so much propaganda going around to show how this Russian troll farm worked. Well, what people don't know, and the people, and you listen to my thing, you're going to go, you think you go crazy over what I'm sharing here. This one is just so obvious. Do you know how much the so-called Russian troll farms spent in America to change the outcome of the election? If they're to be given credit for that, do you know how much they spent?
How much?
$57,700. They're saying that $54,700 was enough to overturn over $1 billion that Hillary Clinton's campaign spent. That's what they're trying to convince you of. Notice how when they do these reports, they never tell you how much was spent on this so-called Russian troll farms to get black people excited. They never tell you how much they spent. In Google ads alone, they spent $4,700. And on Facebook, where they spent the most, on Facebook, they spent a total of $100,000. But 50,000 of it was spent before the election, and another 50,000 was spent after the election. So there was no intent on these people to undermine the election. Their goal was to get clicks, to get into the American market, and they were going to do so by hook, line, or crook. And the Russians weren't the only ones. You're not told that Czechoslovakia, you're not told that France, you're not told that Canada had similar operations doing basically the same thing. Those are left out of discussion because we got to hate Russia, and Russia has to be used as the puppet it always has been in those instances to explain the reasons why blacks did not vote for Hillary in the numbers they voted for Obama. And blacks, if they're asked, will tell you. In the show, I give the example of an interview with the Washington Post. One of the good things they do, very rarely, they actually asked black people. So you didn't have people commentating about what black people said. They actually went to a place in Wisconsin, a bar, I mean, not a bar, but a barber shop where Hillary Clinton refused to go. She would not go and campaign. And she was a horrible campaigner, by the way. No one wanted to, they didn't want people to look at that. So they asked the black people in that barbershop, why didn't you vote for Hillary Clinton? And they said they refused to participate any longer in the lesser of two evils. That's number one. Number two, it was leaked. People either choose to forget this or they don't remember it, or the media didn't say it enough because they were trying to hide it. That WikiLeaks, which is why we got to hate Julian Assange, WikiLeaks revealed that Hillary Clinton was saying one thing to investors on Wall Street, and she
Yeah.
told them to their face, don't believe me when I'm out there telling people I'm going to do things for them. I'm really going to be your guy, your gal in office. Well, that made her look bad. Another thing WikiLeaks revealed was that when we saw the cameras showed us showing Black Lives Matter movement meeting with her privately, which was done for the cameras, But a memo that WikiLeaks leaked out showed perfectly that you can meet with them, but don't promise them anything. Well,
That's right.
that sort of put a bad taste in the mouth. And the cherry on top was this: Hillary Clinton had mentioned that her goal as president will be the third term of Obama. Well, that really is really good for white elites who made out big in Wall Street after he bailed them out and didn't send them to jail for all that targeting of blacks they did. So, what do you think that meant to black people? Well, when they were asked in this barbershop, they said, her bringing in the third term of Obama, that's crazy because he didn't do anything for us. That means we're going to be voting for her to do more things, not for us. We're not going to do it. And that's why significant numbers of black people would not vote. But
But
all
it
that
had
gets
nothing
focused on
to do with Russia. That
had
wasn't
nothing to do
Russia.
with Russia.
We've got our own
And,
intellects. We know how to think. We know what we want to vote for. Why do they keep saying that Russia influenced the way we chose to vote? This time we didn't
because
show
when they,
lesser two evils, but I'm telling you, we still showed up.
but yeah, and
They
we did in large numbers. We
we
did.
still won 3 million more popular votes. So
You're right.
ultimately,
You're right.
the Electoral College chose her. I
Well,
mean,
that's
chose
true.
Trump.
And also it was white women who chose her overwhelmingly. It was white women that did it. If white women had not voted for the percentages that they did, Trump would not be in office. The Electoral College wouldn't have won in his favor. It was white women that did it, and they don't
Right.
want to face that.
Yeah, but they want to blame us like they're already gearing up to do right now. Calling us
After the 2000 election,
we don't matter at the same time. Go
after
ahead.
the 2000 election, they did the same thing. After the 2000 election, they did the same thing. The hanging chads was blamed on us. We don't know how to vote. The crash of 2008 2009 was also blamed on us. We wanted too much house we couldn't afford, and so now with this Russian troll farm story, this is why we took it on. It was our main event. They're saying by the 2020 election, this is what the spooky Russians are doing in the black community again. You know what it did last time. Again, this is an appeal to let whites know that if blacks don't show up in the numbers they think we should for voting for Democrats, it will be our fault if Trump wins. And that's what they're saying amongst themselves. And that's what the line of reasoning coming out of the Democratic Party. It's a blame thing.
Well, how is that?
We're the scapegoat. We're the nation's scapegoat. We're the
Well,
nation's scapegoat.
I say that well, it's incredible how we are, especially given that who was it? Lord have mercy. I think it was Connie who shared with me about a Twitter from Hillary Clinton yesterday or the day before, really praising the Hispanics and basically alluding to the fact that they no longer need our vote to win, that they've got the Hispanic vote. And that would stand to reason why they have been in full support of immigration and illegals. And here it goes. Let me read this to you, family. I just went over to my Facebook to find it. Hillary tweets, mobilizing the Latino community is our path to winning the White House, flipping the Senate, and electing progressives across the country who will put families first. At Latino Victory US has a plan to win. Help put it in action. Hold on. Help put it in action by midnight. Chip in to elect more Democrats and win. This is what Hillary Clinton just tweeted yesterday or the day before to basically tell us, we no longer need your vote. We have successfully replaced you with the Latina vote, and that's the way we win. Can you believe how they're giving us their ass to kiss all the way around on every front, from Biden not having an American agenda, even less of an agenda for ADOS. And then she tweets the Hispanics is going to get, the Latina community is going to get them the victory. Can you believe this?
Yeah, I can. They've been planning it since Nixon dubbed them Hispanic in the 1970s. They never saw themselves as Hispanic. In the early days, they even hated the term. They attempted to organize Latin American and Mexican people as a bloc, even though they never saw themselves as a bloc, but they wanted to do that as a bloc since the 70s to undermine the black vote. What we're seeing now is the fulfillment of that.
So this is why it's important that we invoke some form of strategy. What are you
Exactly.
planning to do with your vote? Dawood, can you share with people, because we really value what you have been sharing with us these last few shows that you've been partnering with me in, and I thank you so much.
No
Guys,
problem, man.
we'll be back tomorrow. Oh my God, tomorrow, our children and the I'm trying to recall the title. Hold on one second. I wrote it down. Just a second. Our children and something they deserve and the lives they deserve. Let's see here. Uh oh, Sugarfoot. I don't have that title on here. I already posted
I
it.
have it.
Yes, please share what the title of tomorrow's fire show will be at 9 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock Central, and 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Could you please share what we're discussing tomorrow, the title at least?
Yeah. I'm just waiting for it to come up.
That's fine.
It is our children the promise they deserve.
Yes,
And that stems from the idea that I was growing up with in the 70s. And my father said that I was to do this for my own children. You're supposed to do better for your children, better than you had. And that was just a sacred promise to me. But we've been failing them these past 30 years or more. We really have. Uh, every
yes,
time
we
we
have.
say we, every time we say that the children are our future, we've not been actively engaged in making sure there's going to be a future there for them. And so that's
You
why I entitled it "Our Children: The Promise They Deserve."
Amen. I can't wait for that fire show, family, tomorrow. Make sure you tune in. We're going to finish out in this dialogue because we're now at 62 minutes. We've gone a little over if you guys can bear with us. But I was asking Dawood, do you agree with my Democratic down ballot strategy for the general?
Yes, I do, wholeheartedly, and I've dedicated myself to fulfilling that as being a part of a group. I sometimes could act like I'm a part of a group sometimes, and that's the plan for the group. What any group needs are people willing to fulfill the objectives of leadership. We don't always have to like them, but the outcome is that we'll be advancing the cause, and the cause is more important than any leader, and it's more important than any hurt feelings. I'm sorry, the children, as you already know from our first time, they're killing themselves. We've got to stop responding to emotional drives. We've got to use that emotional drive, however, to have specific outcomes. And that's where our focus needs to be. And therefore, the plan on how we're going to be dealing with the Democrats, and I say dealing with the Democrats because I got a criticism for, well, you're still going to be voting Democrats, the people that listen to that rhetoric. And I'm saying, no, I'm utilizing the leverage we have within the Democratic Party to benefit us by voting down ballot. That's leverage, and that's an avenue to power.
And could you please either concur or deny that the president doesn't matter with respect to our vote like the Congress does? Do you agree or disagree with my thoughts on that?
I definitely agree with that because the Congress has been effective because of the corruption to get multiple back-to-back terms, which makes them very dangerous if we're not focused on them while we center our hopes and dreams on a president whose goals, even if they're in our favor. We can use Clinton as a prime example. The last 2 years of the Clinton presidency, black unemployment levels were very good. We were moving into better job positionings. But what happened in the first 2 years of the Bush years? Those were all obliterated. They were obliterated.
So
Because
we
what you
have,
had in between those two is the same Congress that made the same old decisions that, despite us benefiting to some degree to economic policies that Clinton had done, they were always going to be temporary. But a Congress could have made them permanent, and that's the ball we keep missing.
okay, and So it is imperative with us, those of us who are becoming more politically educated, to not just show up during the general. We must show up during the midterm.
Exactly.
And I would say that also, what do you
Sorry, you're freezing up. I don't know if you can hear me.
hold on? Family, y'all won't believe what just happened. Ooh, they don't want us to have this conversation. You can hang up the phone now, Daoud. Are you still? Let me see if I can hear you on the live. Can I?
Okay, I'll hang on.
Okay. Family, they are trying it. I have never had the Wi-Fi in my home totally stop working. Okay, y'all, they don't want us to have this conversation, but we're
Yes,
gonna
ma'am.
have a conversation. I thank y'all for hanging in there. I hope y'all still there. If it happens again, just hold on because I got my backup. I got my T-Mobile hotspot. If Spectrum cuts out on me one more time, we'll be moving
Wow.
here because we're going to have this
Wow.
conversation. We're going to get this information out to the people. The show will go on. They don't understand. I got a backup plan. Anywho, I was asking before I got cut
Go
off.
ahead.
I didn't hear your
All right.
response. How would you sell people who
Wow.
are vote blue no matter who and angry with us for our Democratic down ballot strategy?
Yes, ma'am.
How would you sell it to them? How would you sell that to people who are opposed to our Democratic down ballot strategy?
Okay, I'll hang up.
No, you're on the line. I got you on the computer. Don't go. Daoud? Daoud? Daoud, do you hear me? Oh, Lord, I hear. Daoud! I got to call him on the phone. I can't hear him. Ooh, wee. Daoud, I hear you rumbling. Oh, there he is. Daoud?
Oh, ma'am.
Okay, Daoud, listen here. I got you on the phone because for some reason it's messing up on the computer. So I mute your computer sound. All I can hear is rumblings. and we need to get through with this show. So I pulled you back onto the phone. So just don't even worry about the sound on the computer. If you could.
Yeah, I'm cutting it off now.
Yeah, because I hear feedback.
Okay, it's cut off.
Thank you so much. So, woo-wee, family. Breathe. Anywho, like I was asking you, how would you sell people who are still riding with Biden despite all of his issues and not choosing to join the ADOS movement in the Democratic down ballot strategy? What would you have to offer?
Well, I would let them know that they're going to be whittling away our children's future. That's another big one. Remember I said earlier who contributed, the Democratic congressperson who contributed to the mass surveillance state? It was Joe Biden.
Oh,
he was a co-author on it. So he's not going to do anything that's going to change that. And so with the vaccine mandating that they're talking about now and these restrictions that they're talking about now, he has helped with the Patriot Act to establish a surveillance state that'll now have the excuse of doing more surveilling of people that are, quote unquote, endangered to infect others because of the COVID. So is there anything he's saying specifically that he will not do in order to trample all American rights on that issue? I don't think he's going to bring it up, and no one's going to tell him about it because they're not thinking about it, but he's one of the principal authors of the Patriot Act that allowed for all this mass surveillance. We already know his stance on mass incarceration. He named the bill after himself. Well, aside from everybody talking about that, what is he doing to improve the lives of men that he overly incarcerated to help them through that trouble? He's known this since he's been vice president. He's authored no bill to change that reality. As president, have you heard of a bill he sponsored to change the realities of Black men being carted away in mass incarceration? I haven't heard any. He's not going to change his legacy. He sees it as his legacy. So he's not going to do it even if he remembers his name enough to even say it. He's not going to do anything that's going to change his legacy because his legacy is a part of the survival of the white collective. That's how he sees it. I'm convinced of that. He's no different than a Southern congressperson. You should not see him other than a blue dog Democrat.
He is Strom Thurmond's boy. What? I don't get how people are so quick to forget.
Because of association with Obama, which is why we got to do something about Obama in our mind. We've got to do something.
I don't get why people can't see the parallels between us being on the bottom and Obama not being our president as he said he was not. That was not just in word, that was in jest.
I agree. And so many of our population relies on symbolism and emotionalism instead of logic and tangible. That's why. And the people in power know this about us. And ADOS is a part of the change of that. The challenge is, will we change enough collectively to make a meaningful change in Congress politically so that we can have an impact on the lives of our children? That's the challenge. We've got to win them over or develop strategies that can push our agenda despite them. That's the challenge before us. And we don't have much time to put it together.
Well, let me have you please go back over your talking points. I thank you for all of that. Let me see here real quick. You interrupted what he was saying about Hillary. I did?
It doesn't matter, man. You got it.
Okay. It's frozen, I guess. Yeah, it was frozen, Carl. Thanks, Dawood Giazan, for your time and your excellent intellect. I concur. That's from Carl Perry. Let's see here. They consider us to be children and to always do what we are told. McKeppy said about voting blue no matter who. Yeah, to the point where they don't believe they have to offer us anything. That's what it's become now. How dare you ask for tangibles? Yeah. I can't believe the fight I'm having with ADOS in my own, not in the movement, the conscious ones of us who are politically educated. I'm talking about in the Angela Nirvana stream, the fights I'm having with people who think I'm being too much for asking for tangibles in exchange for our vote. They don't talk about other groups like this. Other groups are allowed to come to the table and ask for tangibles in exchange for their vote, but we dare not.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame. But I have to also say, this is just a repeat of the same old history, man. No more than 2% of the Black population actively fought for civil rights. That's a reality.
What?
So we
what?
Yeah, 2%. Most people sat back and wanted to wait what was going to happen. They didn't know. They were scared. But the truth is, 2% nationally actively participated in the movement. I'll tell you a little story. I hopefully won't take you long. You can cut me off if you want.
No, I'm not. Really you ain't cutting off nothing. I'm here. I'm enjoying everything you have to share. My audience seems to be hanging in there too.
In 1998, I sat at a celebration for Martin Luther King. And it was customary, 1998, beautiful time. And my mentor at the time, who was a Green Beret type, who was into journalism, and that's another reason why I went into journalism. He's just a fantastic individual, had an exciting life. And he bent over to tell me, he says, you know, that man who's speaking up for Martin Luther King, he was one of the assistant deacons or lay people in the church whose job it was in 1967 to go pick him up at the airport. Coretta Scott King has roots in the Springfield, Yellow Springs, Dayton area.
Whoa!
And she used to go to she went to Antioch College, which is the same place where Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Leonard Nimoy of stock fame, they attended Antioch College at the same time.
Wow!
And she would come and stay in Springfield, and she would attend the church that my family's church was a part of in Springfield. And it was at that very church they were holding the celebration. And so my mentor bends over to catch my ear while this guy is praising King, doing a good job too, praising King. But he bends over to my ear and says, well, you know, him and 3 other fellows were supposed to pick up Martin Luther King in 1967 at the Dayton airport. And they stranded him. They wouldn't pick him up. Because that was shortly after he gave that speech against Vietnam. And if you're a good, loyal American and you definitely hate the Russians, you definitely wouldn't be against the war. Well, some Black people were of that intent. I submit it's their grandchildren you have to deal with now. Well, he went on to tell me that they stood him up at the thing, but today they're praising him in 1989. So I didn't think much of it, but I was sitting at home with my television and a big news story was coming up. They were holding a hearing because the lawyer for James Ray, who's been blamed for killing Dr. King, they were holding a hearing. And the hearing was going to determine what happened. And the outcome did. They presented all this evidence. They even got the shooting of Martin Luther King on tape. It's at the Pentagon. The person who did the filming was one of the people on the stand. There were 5 groups involved with Martin Luther King's killing. The Mafia, because his quest for peace would have undermined the gun trade. America is #1 to this day in distributing guns and conflicts around the world. Well, King striving for peace from the war would have interrupted that. So they had a hitman from the Mafia there. They had 2 hit squads from the government, one CIA, another one military intelligence, and then the Ku Klux Klan, local Ku Klux Klan, and the police force. The person who actually shot Martin Luther King, as determined by the evidence and decided by a jury that was half white and half Black, in 3 hours they concluded that it was a police officer who was also working for the mob who actually fired the shot. But we now know wisely that did not kill him. He was in a coma. The person who actually killed him was the doctor who was to provide medical treatment for him, smothered him. That was all done in testimony. So I'm freaking out, at hearing this and eager to go to the next Martin Luther King celebration. So this was 1999, December, where the decision came down. The King family took the decision and went to Janet Reno at the time. While she did not find anything wrong with the conclusion of the jury on the trial, she refused to do any further investigation to go to the culprits who actually were involved in the plot. So we know it was a conspiracy. We know the government was involved. We know that the mafia was involved. And we know that local Klan members were involved. And the local police were also involved. They acted as lookouts and helped Ray to get away from the area while the shooting was occurring. So all that came out in trial. This is all we know. Now, think that I'm saying this now, and it's 2020, and people are still on television, the media is still saying and acting as though Ray is the one that did the shooting, and it stops with him. Think about that. That's propaganda. That's an evidence of propaganda. So I go to the next meeting, the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King. With all this coming out, it had a good 5-day run in the news, with Janet Reno giving the last word that she's not going to pursue any further legal redress in regards to Martin Luther King's killing. So I'm going to his celebration expecting people there to say, what are we going to do with this? You know, what can we do? It was like it never happened. Like the trial never happened. People were just going on and talking about how great King was, and you know, it's a shame we lost a leader and what we need to do for our children in the future. But no one ever talked about the decision that came down just a few months earlier. That was the last King celebration I have been to. I refuse to go to another. That's my story.
Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Visual Joe Perry says she provided a link from the Amsterdam News. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I fear I am integrating my people into America, a burning house.
A burning house. That's right. That's exactly right. That's what has become of it. And we're now seeing examples of that through what they're doing for Hispanics, Latinos, Mexicans, what they're doing to supplant Blacks with television and movies and theaters. They are including upper caste foreign non-whites or African from the continent to supplant us so they can visually X us out. So they can say, well, we don't have any problem with Blackness. We just have a problem with you. And that was because our connection to the debt that is owed. All the more reason what I'm sharing today about white minority rule and how apartheid and fascism are coming back in a big way. We need more people to be active. We need at least, we don't need everybody. We need 5 to 10% that are actively engaged in whatever endeavor, whether it be through ADOS or other actual movements, to be doing this. If we don't, our children will suffer.
Visual Joe Perry also says, more than one military and police officer saying we are under tyrannical laws, no democracy in the land for the people equals suspension of constitutional rights.
Habeas corpus, Obama was able to do that, and he got away with it. So much of his imagery was to help further an agenda. So he got rid of habeas corpus. We should have, or legal people should have, been against him, but it was stymied. He wins either way. They can't go against him because he's Black. A lot of elite whites feel that way. They had a problem with this because they would be accused of being racist because the people in power wanted that to happen. The suspension of habeas corpus, which would allow them to just take people off the streets without charge. So that's already, there's a precedent for that already. And Obama was the one that did that. If Bush would have tried that, it wouldn't have gotten anywhere. It wouldn't have gotten a chance in the Haiti. But it was Obama that helped to usher in this new era of white apartheid rule.
Well, let me go back to your other 11 points. You had intermittently asked some questions. Do you want to go over those answers? You had a way that you wanted to roll the show out. Can you spend a few more minutes with us concluding on those 11 talking points?
I don't mind. The questions, though, were really for the listeners to really think and ponder on it. I compiled the list. At the same time, I have my ideas on how we should do it. I think one of those ways is active political engagement, which we're doing through the ADOS lineage movement. But there are other critical needs and critical questions that are still left out there that are sort of beyond the scope of political activism that people need to be doing. And one of which we're going to be talking about tomorrow, which is what can we do to help our children and strengthen them through this coming struggle. And I'm going to be having a lot of solutions there. But as far as this goes, I really wanted people to listen to our discussion again and where I ventured those questions and really think seriously and hard about what we need to do whether it be in the political realm or elsewhere, in solving those questions, because all of those questions are critical.
Okay, then I guess that concludes our show for today. Is there anything else you wanted to say in closing? Before I let you do that, David Wright, New York City, what is up, fam? He says, I am loving what you're doing. Stay strong, Angela Nirvana. Y'all don't even know.
Amen.
This was my Louis Armstrong back in my theater days at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe in New York City. And he was and is an extraordinary actor. I had such a privilege and an honor working with the likes of David Wright in The Apple. And my life took a different turn when I came to LA. I had no idea all of what I learned in the theater from the likes of David Penoy, John Scutchins, too many to name. I had no idea those gifts and talents was going to bring me front line of the revolution for my people, for the liberation for my people, for the reparations for my people. I had no idea this is the way God was going to redirect that gift in me. But I just love you, David Wright, so much. And I know I'm not in touch with New York as often as I used to be. But you see by this show, my hands have been full since growing the movement. You know, last year, this has kind of took over my life. As Dawood just mentioned, it is for my daughter and everyone's daughters and sons that I do this. You know, I often mention how my daughter fears for my life. And I said, she asked, you know, why do you have to be the face of this movement? Why do you have to constantly be out front? Can't you just give money and do things on the low? And I said, the fact that we're in 2020 and you have to fear for my voice speaking up on behalf of American descendants of chattel slavery is the reason why I must be the face of it. Lisa Todd, I see you, darling. She says, great show. And I love you guys' shows as well over at the Articles of ADOS podcast. You guys, if you want more of that incredible Lisa Todd and that incredible Dawood Giazan, you must visit the Facebook page and subscribe. Articles of ADOS. Articles of ADOS. They've got about 6 shows in the pipeline. So episode 3 and 4 are 2 of the shows I absolutely need to go back and check out. I hear they are both fire shows, as I'm sure they all are. I really enjoyed episode 6 and just their overall platform and all these different voices and the way that we're expressing to uplift and help the ADOS overcome the designs on our life to destroy us. Dawood, did you want to share about, do you want to share about the beautiful lady who has the spiritual website that is a producer of you and Lisa's show?
Yeah, she's a fantastic sponsor. Her name is Yafa Bay. It's the Spirit of Tepereth. It's a metaphysical shopping mall that is now online, and I believe I've already shared the link with you. Please do service with her, and I thank these 2 people that listen to your show that have done business with her, and I wish them and all others grace and beauty for doing so.
And I will be visiting her site as well. If you could send me the link in Messenger again, because I had to scroll through so many of our exchanges to get to it. I'd like to tape it and all the additional links in this particular thread once the show concludes. Okay.
I'm going to overload you.
I love it. Well, they'll have a lot to read and feast on and get educated about, because that's what we need, family. We are outgunned and outmanned. So trying to pick up guns, click out and on, still freezing, need own social media platform, get your own app off from Facebook. I know, sweetheart. That's what this app is. This is the Be Live app. I don't see what you're seeing in terms of the freezing. I will be able to see it in the playback. So thank you for sharing that with me. But this is my platform, so I wouldn't be suffering through what you're describing, and I'm still suffering through it, I suppose. I have to let the app know. But with that said, I look forward to you guys coming in tomorrow's show with Dawood Jiazan about our children and the promise they are due, the promise they deserve. It is on us now to deliver them a healthy country to dwell in as they continue to give birth to ADOS in this country. With that said, I want to close us out with the prayer of protection that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOS and its allies are, God surely is, because you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the hands and feet of God. You are the living temple of the Spirit of the living God. Until tomorrow, you guys make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your day. I love you, Black. I love you, Strong. Mwah. Bye for now, family. Thank you for watching. Share and go and sign the petition for the COVID relief. All right. Take care, guys. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Peace. Thank you, Dawood.
No problem, ma'am.